On November 1st, 1991, amidst the applause of countless guests, an elderly groom in a black tuxedo, Bill, stood beside his bride, Omaima, radiant in her white wedding dress. But the atmosphere inside the hall was a little uneasy. Throughout the ceremony, guests whispered quietly among themselves. What drew the most attention were two things: the striking age gap between the couple and the unusually short length of their courtship, and understandably so. The groom, Bill, was 56 years old. The bride, Omaima Nelson, was just 23. A staggering 33-year age difference. Even more surprising, they had decided to marry after dating for only 5 days. So how exactly did this unlikely couple meet? Let's begin with the bride. Omaima Nelson was born in 1968 in Cairo, Egypt. She was Egyptian by birth. From a young age, she was tall, with long, slender arms and legs. People often encouraged her to consider modeling. And so, in 1986, at the age of 18, Omaima moved to California, chasing her dream of becoming a model. But things didn't go as planned. In the United States, she quickly discovered the competition was overwhelming. Surrounded by women even taller, more glamorous, and with striking looks, Omaima found herself repeatedly rejected at auditions. Unable to break into the modeling world, she took on nanny work to support herself. Still, financially, life remained very difficult. By 1991, 5 years after arriving in California, 23-year-old Omaima began working part-time at a bar in Orange County, and it was there that people couldn't help but notice her. Her Egyptian heritage gave her an exotic look. Combined with her tall frame, long limbs, and elegant presence, plus her gift of conversation, she quickly became well known at the bar. Many men tried to win her attention. One of them was a 56-year-old man named Bill Nelson. Bill quickly became infatuated with Omaima. He was so captivated that he began visiting the bar almost every day just to see her, soon becoming a regular. At the time, Bill was actually married, but privately, he was going through a turbulent period. He had once held a respectable career as an airplane pilot, but back in 1984, he was convicted of smuggling marijuana and spent 4 years in prison, losing both his job and his reputation. Recently paroled, he had only just secured a new position at a different company. Despite his past, Bill felt a special connection with Omaima. Conversations flowed easily between them, and he felt at ease in her presence. From Omaima's perspective, Bill seemed like a stable man. He had a steady job, owned his own home, and, perhaps most impressively, drove a sleek sports car, signs that he was financially secure. On top of that, people around her often remarked, "Bill seems to have money, doesn't he?" Their encouragement only made her fall deeper under his spell. Soon, their relationship moved at lightning speed. Just 5 days into dating, they decided to marry. On November 1st, 1991, the two hastily held their wedding ceremony, but their newlywed life was anything but peaceful. Exactly 1 month later, on December 2nd, a chilling call reached the police station. A man's voice trembled as he reported, I was given something by a friend. It's a human head." Police rushed to the scene. The caller, nervously biting his nails and clearly distressed, introduced himself as Jose Esquivel. When officers asked, "Where is the head you're talking about?" Jose pointed with a shaking hand toward a corner of the living room. There sat a brown bag. The police, wearing gloves, carefully opened it. Inside was a black plastic bag, and within that, chunks of dried reddish matter, and the severed head of a man. The situation was grave. When the officers pressed Jose further, "Who gave you this bag?" he gave his answer.
"My ex-girlfriend, Omaima Nelson."
That was Jose's answer. He testified that on the afternoon of that very day, Omaima had shown up at his house twice, driving a red sports car. The first time, she dropped something off at his front door and quickly disappeared. But not long after, she returned and knocked on his door. When Jose opened it, Omaima immediately broke down in tears. She sobbed, "My husband forced himself on me. We fought, and I killed him." Imagine, an old girlfriend suddenly reappearing only to confess murder. Clearly, she was looking for help. Jose, stunned and confused, nevertheless let her inside. He listened as she poured out her story, all while trying to buy time and figure out what to do. From her account, it became clear that the past month of marriage had been far from blissful. The first major conflict was over finances. Bill's apartment carried a steep monthly rent. On top of that, his prized sports car came with equally hefty lease payments. No matter how much money he brought in, the expenses were overwhelming. And Omaima claimed she only discovered all of this after the wedding. Then, one day, a letter arrived in the mail. When she opened it, she was shocked. It was a notice that both the rent and the car lease were seriously past due. Growing more suspicious, Omaima opened the drawer where her husband kept documents. Inside, she found not only papers for the house and the car, but stacks of overdue notices and insurance bills. As the money troubles surfaced, tensions between the couple escalated. But it wasn't only financial problems. According to Omaima, Bill's behavior had become violent after the wedding. He drank, frequently beat her, and forced rough sex against her will. On the day of the incident, she says, Bill tied her to the bed, pressed a knife to her, and demanded sex. Unable to bear it, Omaima grabbed the iron from the bedside table and struck Bill on the head. When he bled and writhed, terrified that he would attack her again, she picked up a pair of scissors and attacked him further. After that, she claims, he stopped moving. So, in her account, yes, she killed her husband, but it was in self-defense. But what then was in the bag? It was the man's head. Omaima made a chilling request of Jose. Listen, police can only ID a body by the teeth. You have to pull out his teeth and grind his head in a blender. That way, the remains will be gone. If you do this, I'll give you $75,000 in cash and 2 motorcycles. Hearing this, Jose was horrified. Then he noticed Omaima's hands. They were badly cut and looked like they had been through a struggle. But then, the doorbell rang. It was a neighbor, an older woman, who had come by and immediately noticed Omaima's injuries. Seeing the cuts all over her, the woman remarked, "You really should go to the pharmacy and get those looked at." Seizing the moment, Jose quickly told Omaima, "Why don't you go home first? I'll go pick up some medicine and bring it to you later." As soon as she left his house, Jose called the police. He was terrified she might return at any moment, but he knew he had to act. Police immediately began tracking Omaima's movements. She had been driving a red sports car, a Chevrolet Corvette. Officers across the city were alerted, and soon after, they spotted the car. When police pulled her over and asked to look inside, they found something chilling. In the back seat was another brown bag, just like the one at Jose's house. Inside was what appeared to be human organs, bloodied and raw. Right there on the spot, Omaima was arrested. Armed with a warrant, investigators then headed to the apartment where the crime had taken place. Inside, they followed the hallway into the bedroom. The moment they opened the door, they saw one wall completely splattered with blood. Clearly, this was where the violence had occurred. But something was strange. The room itself was otherwise spotless, as if someone had carefully cleaned it. Acting on instinct, one officer lifted the mattress. The underside was soaked through with dark red blood, and that gruesome discovery was just the beginning. In the kitchen, officers searching among the appliances made a horrifying find. Inside the deep fryer, they discovered parts of a human body. Then, when they opened the trash can, they saw bones mixed in with discarded food scraps. Among the remains of a turkey dinner were more of Bill's body parts. This all unfolded just days after Thanksgiving. Amid the holiday leftovers, investigators found human body parts tossed into the trash. But that was only the beginning. When they opened the freezer, they discovered several foil-wrapped packages, just like frozen food. Inside each one, more human remains. It became horrifyingly clear the body had been dismembered and scattered throughout the kitchen. For 2 full days, police searched every corner of the apartment, the garbage area, her car, even nearby storage units. With each search, they uncovered more pieces of the corpse. And yet, something didn't add up. By their calculations, nearly 100 pounds of Bill's body were missing. Almost half of him had vanished. The question haunted investigators. Where had it gone? Meanwhile, in court, despite overwhelming evidence, Omaima denied everything. First, she claimed, "Some strange man called me that day and told me to open a bag in the house. When I did, I found my husband's severed head. I panicked and went to Jose for help." It was an outrageous lie. When that story fell apart, she spun another. "My husband, Bill, was the real killer. He had been butchering women for years. Those body parts in the trash, they belonged to his victims." The brazenness of her claims left investigators stunned. But in the end, Omaima finally confessed. She admitted that on November 28th, just 3 days before her arrest, she killed her husband, Bill. Still, she clung to one defense. She insisted it was self-defense, that Bill had tried to assault her, and she fought back. But the deeper investigators dug, the more grotesque Omaima's methods of disposing the body turned out to be, crossing far beyond any line of sanity. She had chopped the corpse into pieces and left them scattered around the house. Some were even found inside the deep fryer. Why the fryer? Well, investigators soon discovered the truth. Particularly incriminating were the fingers, the ones that could be used for identification through fingerprints. Those fingers had been boiled to destroy them. And remember, she had even begged Jose to pull out Bill's teeth so the body couldn't be identified. That was the kind of horrific request she made. Yet even after days of searching, some body parts were never found, which led investigators to an unthinkable question. What exactly did she do with them? Later, through Omaima's own testimony, the most shocking revelations began to surface. In court, she claimed she had been abused as a child and used that as the basis for a diminished mental capacity defense. To support this, she underwent psychiatric evaluations. And during one of those sessions, she opened up about what she had done after killing her husband. Her words chilled everyone. "I put on red lipstick," she said. "When I chopped him up, I wore a red hat and red high heels." She even described her husband's blood in disturbing terms. It looked appetizing, and it was Thanksgiving. Perfect for a barbecue. These weren't the words of someone simply recounting a crime. They were the ramblings of someone completely detached from reality. The sheer abnormality of her statements sent shockwaves through the media, the prosecution, and the police alike. Headlines exploded. Not only did she kill her husband, She cut up the body and even cooked it. But pinning down the exact truth of that day proved difficult. Why? Because during psychiatric evaluations, Omaima may have been trying to present herself as severely mentally unstable, behavior that could potentially reduce her sentence. Chilling, isn't it? Meanwhile, investigators set out to test her claim of self-defense. First, she said she killed him because he was about to assault her. But the injuries on Omaima's body didn't match the areas she said Bill had attacked. Second, remember the alleged weapons? She claimed she used an iron and scissors, yet examination showed the fatal head injuries were caused by a lamp and an iron, not the tools she named. Third, she insisted Bill had tied her with rope during the assault. But think about it. If she'd been bound, how could she have reached the nightstand to grab the iron? The distances didn't make sense. Worse, rope marks were found on Bill's body, not hers, indicating he, not she, had been bound. Her shifting stories and repeated lies dragged the trial out for months. Finally, in January 1993, after a long legal battle, the court reached its conclusion. It wasn't premeditated, but it was intentional murder, not self-defense. She was sentenced to life in prison. It appears the grotesque nature of the crime factored significantly into the court's judgment. But there was one point still left unaddressed. At its core, why did Omaima kill her husband, Bill? They had been married barely a month. Financially, she was struggling. Yet if she had simply relied on him, she might have managed to survive. Omaima insisted it was an impulsive act provoked by his abuse. But investigators suspected there was more to the story. When they dug deeper, they uncovered a crucial fact. On paper, Bill and Omaima weren't legally married at all. Bill already had a legal wife. The two had never finalized their divorce, meaning the wedding with Omaima was nothing more than a ceremony without legal standing. And then came the real blow. Bill was not as wealthy as Omaima had believed. He was just an ordinary company employee, no longer able to work as a pilot. Worse still, the little he did own would legally pass to his ex-wife and daughter if he died. In other words, Omaima had been deceived, or at least that's how she saw it. She believed she had married into wealth, only to discover she was stuck with an aging man who had far less than she expected. Consumed with rage, she lashed out, and the result was murder. Of course, her true motive was something only Omaima herself could ever confirm. But the story didn't end there. Her prison life would soon spark shocking headlines of its own. After beginning her sentence in 1993, by 2006, 13 years in, she suddenly became eligible to apply for parole. Even those sentenced to life in prison can sometimes be granted parole due to overcrowded prisons. So, Omaima applied. But when officials evaluated her case, one parole officer gave a chilling warning. Omaima Nelson is an unpredictable individual, and she could pose a serious threat to public safety. With that statement, Omaima's first parole request was denied. Clearly, she hadn't been a model inmate either, but the drama didn't stop there. While in prison, Omaima began writing letters, eventually corresponding with a man on the outside. It seemed like some sort of prison pen pal relationship, but soon it turned into something much more. Omaima actually married him while still behind bars. That meant conjugal visits were now permitted. Her new husband? A wealthy man in his late 70s. It doesn't take much imagination to guess Omaima's intentions. Then, in 2011, the man died of illness. His fortune, by law, was automatically inherited by Omaima. That's right. While locked away on a life sentence, she managed to secure a new source of wealth. All she needed now was parole. So in 2011, she applied again. But once more, prison officials strongly opposed her release. The request was denied. As of 2023, Omaima Nelson remains incarcerated in a California women's prison. And under U.S. law, once parole is denied, inmates must wait years before reapplying. For Omaima, the next chance will come in 2026. Behind bars, she is no doubt counting the days. A former model, striking beauty, a whirlwind marriage, a husband murdered and mutilated after just 1 month. Even whispers of cannibalism. There has never been anything ordinary about Omaima Nelson's story. But one question still lingers. Will she ever be released? And if she is, will America allow Omaima Nelson back into society? This case reminds us that every crime leaves a trail, and eventually, that trail always leads to the truth. For more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Until next time, be safe.